right, it's 7 o'clock in London, 2 o'clock for Artur in Toronto, 11 a.m. in San Francisco, and it's another really big class. Um, Tonight we have the three big violin concertos. Well, there are lots of big violin concertos, but three of the big ones anyway are here today. We've got Brahms, Sibelius, and Tchaikovsky in the opposite order. And our guest teacher is Simon Blendis, who's absolutely astoundingly amazing violinist, leader of the London Mozart Players. And Simon, I was taking a look at your schedule, your aborted schedule from 2020, and I couldn't believe the number of orchestras that you were slated to be guest leader of in the space of about 6 months. It was absolutely amazing, astonishing, and explains why it's such an absolute honor that you're here able to do this for us today.
The
So
honor is all
thank you
mine.
very much. Thank you for being here. And actually you approached me, so I didn't even have to
Good,
do the
good. I was
ask.
begging you to let me do this.
So thank you. I'll just say one thing, which is that I moved to London, about 3.5 years ago. And the first year, I didn't really do much playing at all. But my very first gig, I don't think you know this, Simon, was with the London Mozart Players. So I was as extra for in the first violins for a Brahms symphony. You weren't leading; it was Ruth leading. But you gave me my first job in London, so thank you.
Very
And I
exciting.
also think we crossed paths in an airport. I remember in Bilbao, I think we crossed we both had delayed flights. Um,
I
and
think I was the only person. I was with an orchestra from Manchester, the BBC Philharmonic, and there was problems with the weather. And I was flying back to London, and they were all flying back to Manchester. And I got on my flight and flew home, and their flights were all cancelled. And they ended up staying the night in Bilbao, an extra night. And I had no idea till I got back and had all these texts from the management where to pick my suitcase up and which hotel to go to. So I felt a
that's
bit smug.
crazy. That was actually my last gig was that same festival in Bilbao in at the beginning of March. So anyway, that's how we've crossed paths. And since the last few weeks, I've done a nice little dive into what's available online, and I've really been enjoying your Mozart Mondays, which I've plugged with this group. But the explanations that you give are delightful and interesting, even if you've played the pieces a million times. So thank you for those. Um, so like I said, today we're going to start with Tchaikovsky Concerto, and then we have some Sibelius, and then we have some Brahms. And Simon's thought was that following on Igor's class about the Mozart concerti that are most commonly used for orchestra auditions, why not move into the Romantics? So that's what we're doing today. Our first performer is Stefan Calleja. He's joining us from Malta, but he studies in London with Claire Thompson. And he has the distinct privilege of playing with a pianist. So his video is with piano, and he's given us a portion of the Tchaikovsky Concerto. So here we go.
Can you hear me out there? I can't see Artur. Artur, would you like to join us with your video? Not Artur, Stefan, there you are. No, Stefan, I'm looking at the right place now. Hi, Stefan. Listen, fantastic playing. I'm sorry, that took me a minute to get the technology worked out. Yeah, I can hear you. Fantastic, fantastic. Bravo, there's some clapping from Cecily. Beautiful playing. It's really great to hear you play, and thank you for sending that video. So obviously you're a great player, you're incredibly well set up, your technique is fantastic. I know you're studying with Claire, which is great. I've known Claire a very long time, and you're in great hands there. She's a fantastic teacher. So it's a real privilege actually to have somebody come to the class that can already play. All we need to do now is think about how to make this even better. And what I'd like to focus on a little bit actually is the story of this movement, the story of the piece. And you tell the story in so many ways. So obviously you are the storyteller. The first thing you need to know is the plot. So, you know, the overall structure of the piece and how that informs your performance. And we can have a little think about that as well. But also then we zoom in on all the details of the story and make them as interesting and beautiful and amazing as possible, you know, for our audience. And in fact, let's just dive straight in at the very beginning. Your opening little mini cadenza, if you like. I found myself wondering, I often wonder this actually with this cadenza, it's a curious little bit of writing. What's it there for? What's it doing in terms of the story? How do you feel what the point of that is? Is it just a sort of way of you warming up, or is it a kind of nice little intro? Harmonically, I think the most important question is harmonically, what's it doing there? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I believe harmonically it's quite simple. There's not much going on. I feel it's more of an introduction after the big orchestral introduction. So it's a link to the new melody.
Exactly. And in fact, harmonically, what is going on? Well, it's very simple. I think it's incredibly simple. Could you describe roughly what?
It's playing around the dominant of the major, kind of. But
Exactly.
using this A, B flat.
Exactly. No, that's absolutely brilliant. So, and I think the thing about that is I think one could possibly play it more simply and toy. We're toying with the audience with this A major chord. And as you say, toying with these B flats. There's quite a lot of appoggiaturas in here, sort of. You know, each of those top notes is dying to fall back to the A, isn't it? And then back to our A major chord, and then the trouble is Tchaikovsky hasn't written those bowings, but I think we have to bear that in mind so that we don't support the appoggiatura from the note it belongs to. So I think what's great is if you've got this A major chord going in your head, you're left with it. The A is there as a pedal. Almost keep it like a timpani roll in your head as you play this and see how you relate everything to it. Just play me your entry one more time. That's already, for me, making a lot more sense, actually. And I think the next thing to think about, which I suspect I'm going to come to you a lot, is this idea of tension and resolution. Because that's what, on a big scale, we've got tension. This is all a big dominant chord, basically, waiting to be resolved on ta-dum, tam, there. But also within this, you have tension and resolution. So the tension is resolved there, and is the rest. And at the end, this big one. You know, so I think actually you could possibly enjoy the sweetness of these tensions a little bit more and enjoy the dolcissimo of the resolutions as well. Yeah? Just try it one more time from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. It's beautiful. Now carry on. Play me the beginning of the main theme. really hard to stop people on Zoom, but that's brilliant. Okay, interestingly, I felt you already played differently when you started that first subject, having had the sort of dominant tension that you built up in the opening cadenza. And I think what I want you to think about is the ultimate sound quality of this first. For me, it's kind of like you finally slip into this warm bath that's been waiting for you. You know, you've been denied it and denied it and denied it for all of these bars. And then finally we can sort of melt into it. And the home key of D major, we've actually been waiting. It's interesting, I've got the piano score here. If you look back at where this A pedal starts, it's a long, long way back. It's sort of halfway through the opening tutti. And the A pedal, it lasts for ages, and in the mind it lasts all the way through your cadenza. So when we finally sink into this D major, I just think you can conjure up your most cushioned, gorgeousissimo, if there's such a word, and just feel that, you know, you're sinking into the warmest, most gorgeous bath. And I think the other thing to think about in a big scale is how this sound is going to be different from your second subject sound. So when you get to, we want people to, ideally, you want a different sound for that because it's a different part of the story. Okay, so why don't we try and separate those immediately, looking on sort of a large scale here. So let's hear your moderato assai, the ultimate soft stoltissimo sound you can make. Just straight on the pa-yam, pa. Good. If I can stop you there. Sorry, I just stop you there, because even within that little story, when you come back to the fourth bar, that's where you come back to your D major again. That's already a little local resolution, if you like. And I think, you know, I always feel in these big concertos, I'm talking about tension and resolution. The thing about resolution is the music can relax. So, you know, the shoulders go up and then the music can relax. And actually, we can make friends with all these moments. There are lots of them. But even something like bar 4, I feel that resolution could feel more resolved before you set off on a longer journey. Do you see what I mean? It's really splitting hairs in a way, but actually, I think you have to be careful not to keep us up all the time. You have to let us resolve occasionally as well. And in fact, if you follow this through, intensifying, my God, you know, he's going into the wrong key, but no. Woohoo, we're going to go back to D major. And I think you can, again, take us through that harmonic story more intensely, so that when it pops back into D major, even throw the bow off the string or something with the joy of it. Yeah? I think it's natural kind of exaggerating these things a little bit. Do one more time from the beginning of the moderato. Great, really nice. Stefan, I'm gonna... You can't hear me, you can hear me. Wonderful. You made me smile when you danced up at the top there. The real joy of it. That was great. Really lovely. I think the more you can key into these, you know, you're so lucky you've got a pianist, it seems, in your front room there from time to time. When you're rehearsing with the pianist, it's really worth stopping a lot and working out what is that harmony, how does that fit, where is it in the scheme of things, you know, on a really local level. And actually, I just want to jump forwards a bit now to do that with you and I. So that lovely passage, and I really like the way you smiled when you got there in your video. That was very charming. So as it starts to build up, again, I just want to think slowly and harmonically about what the harmonies are, but not only that, what the notes are doing in each of those patterns. So if we play very, very slowly, it's almost like a sort of microscopic examination. So he's just gone into B minor, right? Okay, and what you had in the two beats there, the dominant and then the tonic. So even on that local level, you've got tension and then resolution, yeah? And then the same thing happens in the next bar. Beat 3 is tension, beat 4 is resolution. And in fact, this keeps happening every beat From there on, tension, resolution, A minor, tension, resolution, A minor, and then the big surprise at the top is the B flat major chord. So what I'd like you to just do is play me these 3 bars incredibly slowly and exaggerate this tension and resolution each time it happens, yeah? Great. Okay, let's stop there. So what I'm actually asking you to do isn't what Tchaikovsky's written. He's written a crescendo all the way through, which is quite rightly what you're doing. So what I'd like to do, just for me, just for now, and this is just a sort of musical practice, if you like, is to really exaggerate the tension and resolution in these local shapes. So even when you get to bar 56, is da 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 resolve, ya da 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 da. So this one, this just as I've actually kind of demonstrated there. Do you see what I'm talking about? And you can then really hear the tension that resolves each time, yeah? Just do that for me one more time from the same spot. Okay, good. Now you see what's going to happen, I find, and I know I'm not the same as everybody else, but if I start practicing like this, in this kind of microscopic detail, and thinking really carefully about the harmonies, is it becomes much more obvious when notes are out of tune, because they don't fit with the harmony, okay? And it really helps us prepare in a much more thorough way, because all of these notes in these 3 bars relate to a harmony in some way. And in fact, we can zoom in even further on each beat to see how that works. So let's take that final bar. So the chord there is, so the second of each group is the foreign note, is the juicy, sweet note, right? Yeah? So you hear that one against the chord. Sorry. And the same here. But, okay? So again, if we listen on that level, then you can pitch those notes against the chord that you should be hearing. Do you understand what I'm talking about there? Yes. I'm sure you do. Could you just play that bar for me one more time and really exaggerate, first of all, what you think of the kind of colourful note. So, do you see what I'm doing there? I'm just sort of adding a lot of sugar onto the sexy notes, yeah? Let's do that. Okay, so it's interesting it's becoming a slow movement, but that's fine. You know, I think we practice it so slowly that the whole mood changes, but it's going to gradually get more in tune. So it's not yet perfectly in tune, but I think you're starting to hear it more harmonically. And actually, I know I keep repeating myself, I'd love you to relax the resolutions even more. So if you imagine beats 2 and beats 4, they drift off into nothing because they're completely resolved, this A minor chord. So just humour me for a minute, exaggerate that just so that I can hear it on the other side of the world. Yeah? It's the same bar one more time. Do you understand what I mean by that? So there's so it just resolves, it evaporates almost. Great. Beautiful. Okay, so you might be standing there thinking, what on earth has this got to do when I'm playing it at 1,000,000 miles an hour? But I think this is a way into slow practice through the harmonies, through the relationship of the notes. And that's going to be with you forever if you practice it like this when you're learning the piece. Because, you know, you're learning it as this is music. It's not just hoops to jump through. You know, and I know that there's a temptation to learn patterns and things like that. But if you learn patterns without actually hearing what the notes are and how they relate to each other and where they fit into the harmonic progressions, then all you're learning is knitting patterns. You know, so I think this is a really nice way of practicing. I personally, although I'm a bit odd, I get great pleasure out of practicing like this because you're really investing in the music, you know. So that's what happens just locally there. And I recommend you try and practice a lot of the movement like that. And you'll suddenly find that when you come to play at a million miles an hour, you've got it absolutely nailed on. You know, I'd love to hear you in another week. And if you come back and see if that's sort of tidied it up, if you like. So listen, amazingly, time is really flowing through. And I just want to jump forward a little bit to the second subject. And if we look, say, just jump a few lines down, in the same way that I was curious about how you got into the first subject. So you played your little cadenza and you got into the subject. And I think we've slightly restructured that. It feels like it makes more sense to me now. I'm also curious about how you get into the second subject. This funny little chromatic scale that he gives us, and it's similar to the opening, isn't it? The orchestra packs up, leaves you with the sort of dominant chord. And I wonder, again, thinking harmonically, if we hear that dominant chord that's started way back, I mean, it goes back to sort of, you know, the top F sharp. If you just play me from there, sorry, it's a horrible place to drop you, but just, and just keep going from there. Show me how you get into the second subject one more time. Okay, great. I'm just going to stop you there. Sorry, I'm just going to stop you there to save time. So that's nice. I think the thing that I don't quite understand is the bar before the second subject. What's happening in that bar and how it relates to the second subject itself. Do you, like me, sort of hear this dominant pedal, this E, that's sort of lasting all... So it starts on it. It's there all the way through, right? And even... It's still going, it's still going, it's still going. And actually what's really interesting, I find, is that it doesn't cadence yet. You start, it's still there. Now, that's where it cadences. And I think it's just worth knowing that, so that we don't put all our eggs into the downbeat, as it were, if that's your basket. Do you understand what I mean? There's something suspended about this downbeat, and there's something suspended across the bridge into it. So just, again, hear those inner harmonies and respond to them as you go up the scale. I think you can leave us dangling. It still hasn't resolved. Now it has. Yeah? Have another go at it. Gorgeous. I mean, really, really gorgeous. That was beautiful. Interestingly, I don't know if it's coincidence, but did you have the E running through in your head all the way through that as a harmony? You played more in tune this time than you have done in your video or on the previous take, as it were. And I think that, you know, I always find that playing concertos is an incredibly lonely experience. It can feel almost like more like a sport, and I always grew up playing chamber music, and I found that the only way I can enjoy playing a concerto is if I pretend to myself that I'm playing chamber music. So I keep finding people to play with. You know, it might be the harp or it might be the whatever it is. You know, but if you hear yourself a chord and you play with that chord, suddenly it becomes kind of easy, right? You're just playing with something else. So even though actually you're playing with silence at that point, I think hearing that chord just changed the way you played it. Let's just have a quick look at the second subject before we get kicked out of here. I find what's interesting about the second subject is what we've just touched on, the fact that the downbeat is always, or very often, the dominant, and it resolves on the next half of the bar. So you get this suspended tension, if you like, resolution, tension, resolution. And I think that once you clock that, it's going to change how you play it. You know, if we go... which you so often hear, it's fine, it doesn't make complete sense to me, because it's... You know, and there's something in the colour that you can make, something in the sound that you can make, that's going to show the audience what's happening underneath it, yeah? So, Just do that for me. Just do it one more time. Maybe go straight on. Could you do like 2 bars before? I'd love to hear that chromatic one more time. Great. Okay, Stefan, I hate to stop you. It's beautiful. You know when we were talking in the opening, and I think I used the un-PC term, the sexy notes. And I think here again, I wish I could find a better way, the colourful notes, the blue notes. Okay, if we look at this bar, that B sharp for me, wow, you know, that's a hell of a note. And then, you know, we don't need that note. He could play, that's what he's saying, but he doesn't. He adds a lot of sugar. And I think both of those, we need to show the audience, they're not essential notes, they're luxury notes. You know, and I think when you get a bit of luxury, you want to enjoy it for a bit longer. Yeah? Do you want to put some special sauce on those notes for us? Maybe just try straight there if you like, that bar. Ya-da-da-yum. Straight on that one. Exactly. And just to continue my current theme, if you ask why is that note there and where does it belong, it's basically squeezing up. The first one's squeezing up to the C sharp and the second one's squeezing up to the E. You know, so the first time you played it, I didn't hear that tension between those notes. You know, if it's fine, but actually if we play, you want to hear the closeness of that semitone. Yeah, see how they're kind of snuggling up to each other a little bit. Yeah, just try one more time. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, it was beautiful. You've got the idea. It's absolutely great. You see, now listen, I've just dropped into 3 different places in the movement to pick out these kind of ideas, but I think this is what's going to give you, you know, something to really think about with this and everything actually. You know, it's just looking for those ways to practice it almost. I mean, it does make it more fun. I can see Cecily has come on, which must mean time's up. And so, Stefan, listen, thank you very, very much. Really, thank you for playing, beautiful playing. You're going to have a great career. I wish you all the very best. And obviously, hopefully bump into you in London, because that's where we both are. So, thanks again. And you can sit down and relax and have a beer.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful, beautiful playing. I love the idea of luxury notes. I'm going to have to think about that. And it's interesting, you know, this is a piece that we've all heard so many times, so we know how it goes. We know that those notes are going to be there, but when you put it that way and hear it again, it's like, oh yeah, that note, that's really extraordinary, and what makes this piece so, you know, eternally loved, I think. We just forget because we hear it so much. So thank you, Stefan. That was really gorgeous playing. We are going to just whip to the next thing, which is the Sibelius Concerto. Our performer is Artur, whose last name I'm not even going to attempt, but perhaps he'll tell us how you say it. And Artur is in Toronto. He studies with Barry Schiffman, who was our guest a few weeks ago. And we've got a bit of Sibelius from him.
Artur, congratulations. Fantastic. Again, another great player. You know, we really are blessed today. Really, I mean, I really take my hat off to you, and you're so well sorted out. Beautiful bow arm. You know, everything's working incredibly well. So, one of the things I'd like to talk to you about, I mean, it's really hard on, you know, Zoom or whatever it is to get a clear idea of sound. But I think that we can just have to think a little bit more about what sounds you want to make at different points in the movement. You know, and particularly this opening. This is such a famous and oft played, and you know, everyone's got their feeling about how this has got to go. But there is something very, very extraordinary about this opening. You know, and again, a bit. I'm afraid I'm going to slightly harp on in a way that I just was with the Tchaikovsky. In that, I think you have to look at the notes themselves and what they mean and where they belong or where they don't belong, and that gives you a sense of the flavour of the sound that we want to make. So I find the very first note of this remarkable because he sets up his D minor chord, D minor, D minor, D minor, and what's the first note? A G. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in the chord, right? So I think there's something about the way we play that note. It has to sound like it doesn't fit in the chord. Do you know what I mean? There's a clash, a weird clash immediately that straight away resolves. And so the fact that it resolves, even the A is right. You know, that's in D minor, so is the D. So I just wonder if you can play it to me that you're hearing this clash that, then it resolves, you know? Of course, you haven't got the piano here, but we can hear it in our heads. I'll play it for you. Yeah, let's exaggerate it. So the sort of strangeness of that G. You know, just for now, because otherwise we won't notice the difference. Exaggerate the difference. Yeah, you see, for me, there's something when it hits the D, possibly it can relax. Possibly, it doesn't have to. Good. It's beautiful, actually. So the thing is, you come back to the D, it reiterates itself. And then you start exploring again. It starts to clash with the harmonies underneath it again. Where does it resolve back to the D minor?
On the A.
Which A?
The that one? Or...
Nearly. Yeah, what's weird about it is, you know, as you get the piano or orchestra does the same thing that you did at the beginning, right? And so actually, although there is a D minor chord here, da, da, ta, it's actually halfway through that bar that we finally get our D back again. So I think there's, again, something in the tension and the relaxation that we can just belong to a little bit. And in fact, the strangeness... There, I don't know if you heard it, but it just finally gets there halfway through that bar. Beautiful, beautiful. That's it. Sorry, it's terrible because I talk and I don't mean to interrupt you, but then you hear me, so you stop. That's the way these things always go. I just want to say beautiful, but don't give up on that A, because the guys underneath are still singing their melody. So this thing is still spinning away on top, you know? Beautiful. Yeah, it actually sounds much clearer now than it did on the other tape, so it's very nice to hear you play. Even here, just take a glancing look at the harmonies as they go past. So So there's this kind of A minor vibe. Now here, suddenly there's this shadow of F major, really weirdly. I mean, actually, it clashes with the sort of, there's two chords always going on in the orchestra, this sort of weird D minor, F major thing happening at the same time. But I just wonder if just this glimmer of F major can make you glow in a different way. Do you know what I mean? And then suddenly, it's back to the kind of intensity of D minor. So, then this E flat major comes in again. Just hearing those harmonies, I think, will change the way you play it. Really, I felt it. Probably, I hope it's not wishful thinking on my part, but I think it felt really different actually. Now, when you carry on, this is what I was talking to. I was talking to Stefan a little bit about the luxury notes. So not all foreign notes are luxury notes, but I think it's worth finding the foreign notes and what they're doing. So there's. It's amazing to have that long C sharp against a D minor chord. It's like someone poking you in the back and they're drilling it in the back. They're just not going to let it go. And I found that you just let it go a little bit. It became kind of ordinary. Yeah, so if it was a drill, then you're just going in. Yeah. We're desperately trying to save it, but there has to be some way of sitting in it that, you know, maybe your bow's going to hardly move, so that somehow, you know, I'm not doing it great, but you know what I mean, it can keep actually developing this intensity. I think the thing about a strange note like that is it jars and then it carries on and then it carries on, you know, and the fact that it carries on for so long against this clash, I think we have to almost increase its intensity as it goes through. Wonderful sound, absolutely, you nailed it, that's it. But that's a big difference actually. I'm really drawn in by that. You know, I think you really got me. Now, again, because we unfortunately don't have very long, I just want to jump into your first cadenza. And I feel like a stuck record today, but the same things keep occurring to me. That what you're doing doesn't make perfect sense when I think of what the harmonies are that are implied by this cadenza. And I wonder if we can shape it a little bit with the rise and fall of the sort of tension resolution. So this, we've obviously got this D minor that we're just embellishing this D minor scale. So it kind of cadences there almost, doesn't it? It sort of relaxes. So there's, and then starts to climb again. So I think where you choose to delay or to dwell on a note, it's really important that it's part of that pattern. I wasn't sure that the notes you chose to delay, if you see what I mean. So I think that B was one of them. I think it's possibly a bit haphazard, you know what I mean? So let's just look at it and maybe choose where to take the time and where to move forwards. Okay, good. I'll tell you what, take your time over it a little bit, because actually you're on your own now, there's no hurry, and you don't have to catch up with anyone. So just enjoy these scales a little bit more. You know, the way they sort of duck and dive is quite fun, and you can sort of follow that shape a little bit more obviously, I think. That's, I mean, a lot of that's already better. Funny enough, I think this might be habit, but you stop on that D. I'm not sure why you would, if you know what I mean. hand, sorry, that's my fault because I told you not to stop, but you don't have to rush through it either. So I think that what's interesting is the shape as you come down. So if you imagine you were doing slurs, so I'm making this up, you can do your own slurs, but it might be something like that, you know. I think there's something about the way they trickle down, but then it's harder to climb. Like anything, it's harder to go uphill than it is to come downhill. So maybe it could feel like more interesting each time it tries to go up, and then it sort of trickles down, something like that, just to make some variety in it. Let's just see. Great. I really like the shape you made there, and then if you play around that, you'll get more control over it as it happens. Yeah. But actually, that did make sense to me. I don't know about you, but that did start to make sense to me, actually. Now, what's really important is this E flat that you've hit is in the next chord, right? Yeah. And I think whatever you do, we don't want like a double bar there, you know, because it's not resolving till here. So you go, sorry, whatever is this? Resolves here, and this one resolves here. This one resolves here. Oh, sorry, wrong chord. And I think exactly as I was saying to Stefan before, if you can show us more tension, resolution, then it won't just sound like someone's, you know, spraying machine gun bullets in a very impressive way, I have to say. Really great. In fact, that was brilliant. I love the way you're listening to the harmonies now, and it really affects the way you play it, I think, in a very positive way. What's going to happen next? I just thought I'd stop you because I think what happens here, it's interesting. I don't know if it's just my addition, but there are these hairpins that he puts in where we've just got to, and for me they slightly contradict the harmonic shapes. So you get all these diminished sevenths, you know, resolves here. That's the only actual triad in the whole thing each time it comes, and I think that this A major chord is really important because that's your dominant chord of the D minor that we're setting up. So I think each time it clarifies into this dominant chord, I think we need to feel it clarify. Do you know what I mean? So if you follow the bass line and then if whatever they happen to be, but do you see what I mean? You can follow that through, that it resolves and relaxes on the A major chord each time. Just play that section, and you may want to slow it down a bit so you can really hear that happening, but whatever you want to do. Maybe just from something like that. Because it's confusing, possibly confusing. I think what I'm talking about here is the fact that it keeps resolving on this A major chord. And I think the word resolving is important. I think there's something that relaxes a fraction in a resolution. So although it's in the middle of his hairpins, just for now, let's abandon the hairpins. A bit like I was doing with poor Stefan before, making him exaggerate these shapes to show the resolution. And I'll tell you why I think it's important, because it's to do with phrase lengths. So you've got the phrase here that's 2 bars long, then again it's 2 bars long, but then the next one at the end is 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to the tempo 1, and it still hasn't resolved. It doesn't resolve till you get to the top of your octaves. Okay, and I think by showing these sort of semi-resolutions each time, you actually phrase the cadenza a little bit more clearly for us. Does that make sense? So, I mean, you know what, just play it once as the chords. So it resolves on that. And then off it goes again. So that I think particularly this G sharp A, there's a sort of feeling about that. You know, in fact, sorry, I've changed my mind again. Just play me the bass line and show me these shapes. So I know I'm contradicting the dynamics in the part, but just for the harmonies. Great, exactly like that. You see, now if you could put all the other notes on top of it and still have those shapes being affected, I think that would be very interesting to hear. Do you want to have a go? I have to say, I'm very, very impressed that you did that straight off the bat, because that's a really hard thing to do. And I think you can build that into your interpretation now of the cadenza. But I felt, forgive me saying that, I felt possibly it was missing before, and I think it will help structure the cadenza. And I think the other thing that will help is as you descend towards the end, that G sharp is really important, because it sets up the, which is your dominant that we've been looking for all the time. So I think don't skimp towards the end of the cadenza. I think let's really hear those bass notes. Actually, if one can wrest back control to actually play, to actually show us the notes as you get to that, I think it would be very effective. You have great control, because that's great. So it's just, I mean, that's massively exaggerated, of course, you know, but actually if one practices that in, then when it comes to it, I think it will feel like a really arresting moment. Just on the next scale, going up, I certainly picked up my idea about the luxury notes, and there are some luxury notes in here. Okay, so if you play the scale, so I spell that out a little bit for you, but you know, there's no reason to have that G sharp there, but it's a beautiful note, you know, and without that note it would have just been a scale. And I think it's a shame to whiz past it without just doffing your cap to it as you go past, just to see how beautiful it could be. So it could be done in lots of different ways. It could just be a little bit of sweetener on it. You know, we don't have to necessarily lean on it, but I think all it is just wink at it as it goes past. So what I might do is I might leave that one with you again, you know, but you can sort of build that one in. But it's great. I love the way you totally embrace these ideas. And I think, you know, if you were playing it, actually, can you do it once without the octaves? Because the octaves are a pain. They get in the way of what we're trying to express. Let's express it first how we want it, and then I'll add the octaves back in. Do you think the whole scale could be a bit more golden, possibly? That's great. Yeah, I think it needs that kind of glow about it. And even with the octaves, if we can strive for that sort of shimmer, then I think that'll be really, really nice. Just before Cecily starts waving at us, we've established this colour that you've now got for the opening. And there's a sort of strangeness to it that we found. You know, this opening G. You know, and I think the sort of icy cold that we find there is really great. And again, thinking long term, we want to differentiate our first subject from our second subject. So what we've got coming up now is our second subject. And I thought you played it beautifully. I think that if you think of how you're going to contrast your first and second subjects, you might make it even more different, the sound on this second subject. Yeah? And how is that going to be more different? Well, it's warm, isn't it? This. You know, whatever kind of duvet sound we want to produce on here. But why don't we do that with bells on? Like, really go for it. Like the most duvet, gorgeous, dolcissimo sound you've ever made. You know, I always feel that it's worth going back to what the actual notes rhythms are at some point. And these are really weird. So I don't know what you're pulsing, but let's just have a big 2 in the bar, say. That's better, I think, yeah. What's strange about this is how fast the syncopations are, actually, when, if you ever did put a metronome to it, you know, da 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 da. You never hear anyone play it like that, but I think it's worth knowing it could be like that, especially for the orchestra. Yeah, so I feel that the texture you create with your first note, I think you could sustain it right up the scale. Do you know what I mean? That sort of cotton woolly, beautiful sound. And then when it comes to the syncopations, it does come back. And I think one can fluff those up again a little bit. Yes, beautiful. And just to make you aware that you have some notes with vibrato and some notes without vibrato. And I think it might be where you shift. So just have a little listen now and see maybe all the notes, or at least all the quavers, deserve a bit of vibrato. Yeah, suddenly it sounds like Milstein, you know, with that sort of attention to detail, absolutely beautiful. And then, da 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 da, and I think that the searing gorgeousness of these sixths, again, I think that kind of relaxed vibrato might work quite well on that. Do you want to just try that? So it may be Zoom, but I'm quite aware of the bow changes in the sixths. And I just wonder, again, we're looking for something that's slightly more, what's the word, blancmange possibly, with this second subject, something that's more friendly and warm and gorgeous. Do you want to just try a slightly more, whatever that word is, that makes the bow change like that? It's very lovely. It actually makes it more legato for me. So it starts to sing a little bit more. You know what I mean? It's less punctuated. So I think that's a really nice approach to have. You probably know this. When you played it through on the video, the next octaves, you started on the half bar. And maybe that was just an aberration. I just wanted to make sure, you know, it's not on the half bar. Yeah. Excellent. Good. If Cecily's going to let us go for 1 more minute, just at the end of this second subject, this, again, it's going back to the harmonies, but D flat minor, and then D flat major. Yeah? And I wonder if, just for the idiots out here, you can exaggerate the difference in tone colour. I should have been able to detect it from what you played, and I kind of can, but talk to me about the 2 different tone colours there. So what's the first one, the D flat minor one, which is officially slightly louder, isn't it? Because that's kind of, the last dynamic was forte, and then it's mezzo forte, not much in it. But what do you want to say with that one that's different?
Well, I think the second one is sort of an afterthought to the first one. So the first one is rather enforcing, but the second is more graceful.
Or conciliatory, maybe. Kind of, the second one smiles, I guess. So in which case, in the first one, could it be sterner? I think, could you frown more through it and maybe sustain it more? I think that hairpin down is a slight red herring, because if we let it disappear, we lose the line. So I think, yes, there is that gesture to it, but it's in the bow anyway, almost. Okay, good. And just again to focus on these two notes, how are we going to make that first one sit in there like a sort of... I think balance-wise, if you could just get a little bit more weight into the fourth finger, then you can really sit on it, because it feels like it's slightly far away. Do you know what I mean? Really better actually. I think we can think about balance a little bit more, you know, where you are in the hand. And in fact, even I think the approach to it is still different. That second one, you know, the first one, and then or whatever it might be. Do it one more time. It's a real pleasure to teach you, because you take it on immediately, everything I've said, even if you think it's rubbish. So thank you very, very much. I can see Cecily's face has appeared. It's fantastic playing. It's getting better and better. So thank you, and greetings to Toronto. And it's very nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really astonishing, Artur. Actually, the way that you just take things on, it's like that. You just do it. It's amazing. You're a pleasure to hear, and I can't wait to hear you again. What did you say? You're in your second year in Toronto, is that it?
No, I finished third year.
Just finished your third year. Well, you've got a great time ahead of you, and thank you for treating us to some Sibelius. It's really wonderful. Great. So that leaves Brahms, Mr. Brahms. Of course, there are many others, and we might we have a little bit of time at the end to talk about these choices of concerti and how people, maybe we could talk a bit about how people choose what romantic concerto to play for their auditions, because I always find that kind of a fascinating thing to think about. But we do have a Brahms concerto, and we have a really nice long section of it to listen to from Kaiyuan Wu, Kenny Wu, from originally from Shanghai. He studies in San Francisco, my old home, with my dear friend Ian Swenson. And let's hear some Brahms.
Hi, I've lost you, Kenny. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hello,
Yeah,
I can't
hi.
see. Hi, I don't know. Maybe I've done something stupid, but I can't see Kenny. Okay, I'll start talking to you, Kenny, and I hope you pop up at some point.
Yeah,
But
I'm here.
fantastic playing. Really great to have you here today. You know, all three of you, just amazingly well set up. There's some great teaching going on here, and beautiful bowing, great sound, great accuracy. I'm just going to ask Mark if he can get Kenny on my screen because it just says Artur for some reason. I don't know why, and Kenny isn't here at all for some reason.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Hey, brilliant. Okay, that's good. I wasn't just talking to a blank screen anymore. Fantastic. Good. How are you, Kenny?
I'm good.
Good. Great to see you. So, now, listen, I don't know if you've been tuned in to the other two masterclasses so far, but if you have, you'll know that I tend to go on about harmony. I don't usually. It's just something about these pieces today. And it's to do with whether, like in this opening statement, you know, I think what happens, the reason I'm going on about it so much at the moment is in these violin concertos, particularly the beginning of what the violin plays, there's great swathes of like one chord generally in the orchestra. And in fact, if you look at the piano part, there's just a D or an A or something going on for bar after bar after bar in the bass. And I think particularly in this opening kind of embellishment, if you like, with the violin, until we get to the main first subject, is a whole page of arpeggios and stuff around very, very simple, slow-moving harmonies. So, and I think it's really important that we pace it well, and that we hear where the harmonies change, so we can inflect them for the audience, if you know what I mean. But also where notes do and don't belong to the harmony. And I'm always interested in the first few bars on that score. Okay, so can you hear me okay? You sort of look like you can't hear me very well, but you can hear me fine? Yeah, great, good. So even the first bar, that G sharp, that doesn't belong to D minor, right? And then the rest of it is D minor. So we've got two notes in that first bar that, you know, to pick up on what Cecily said before, those are my luxury notes. Okay, and I just want to hear them because they are the spice in the food here, you know? So let's just play me that. And then in fact, even just going on, there's an appoggiatura. It's not, you know, it's not just D minor. We get that B flat, which belongs to the next day. So, yeah. And I think it's just registering once in your brain where these foreign notes are and what's foreign about them. What do they do? You know, so on the way up, you have, that belongs to the A. The C sharp belongs to the D. And then this, that belongs to the falling A. It's going the other way. Yeah? You get what I'm going on about, don't you? Let's just hear it. Maybe slightly slower to just bring these things out. Great. Now the thing is, now that you've practiced it like that, you plug it back into your way of playing it, but that's going to be there. Okay, and I felt that these little moments of interest are what really makes it worth listening to. You know, because I think it's actually, to be honest, what's expressive about the music immediately. He could have just slapped down a whole ton of D major arpeggios. You know, maybe a lesser composer would have done. But you know, there's some really beautiful sounds in there. So let's carry on, because what I find interesting now, let's just jump a few bars. So we get the kind of choppy, 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 chop bit, right? You know, and in each of those, there's, we need to find a name for these notes. These are not luxury notes, these are spicy notes, okay? So the spicy notes are notes that tug in one direction or another, rather like these, it tugs us up to the D. And here we have this, so this, there's the tug. Do you hear what I mean? And then this, it does the same in the next bar and the next one. And finally, so each time there's this chromaticism that's really expressive, actually. And I think the trouble is we often hear just chaka 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 chum, chaka 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 chum, chaka 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 chum, and I don't hear that going on, right? So let's play it slowly. So that we have the my favourite thing for today, the tension resolution within each of those shapes. Okay, it's coming, and I think that we might have to just rethink a little bit the stroke to actually bring those notes out, because I'm often not hearing the top of the two. So da 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 dum, and actually that's where the semitone is, isn't it? So this, where is it? So I want to hear within that, yeah? See if you can bring out that. It's coming. So it might just take a little bit of rethinking, a little bit on there. But do you hear what I'm going on about now? That actually, suddenly that melodically is much more interesting than just, you know, chicka 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 chum. So I think that's a tiny little snapshot, if you like, of how I would go back and rethink some of this opening section. You know, that first bar, for example, and then each of these figures. I think there's something very beautiful, actually, in all of the sort of percussiveness of that. Then, of course, you hit your top, and we just, I wonder if you can ping the top note even a little bit more, so that we just hear this diminished seventh as it falls down. Do you want to just try that? So it's almost like a kind of bell ringing on the top of each of these notes, like someone playing the chime bars or something. Bong, 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 bong. Yeah, and actually I think what would help it is if the note before it leads to it. Dum, da-dum, 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 da-dum. It just gives you something to structure it to. Great. So that's brilliant. When it's on the same string, it's much easier to do, isn't it? And then when it's across the string, it's harder to do. So it's just those two that if we can tuck in with the bow. Did you see what I was doing on the way up? So it's these ones. So you actually hear that chord across the strings. I think it's really nice. Yeah, so again, it might just need a little recalibration in the practice, so that as you come up, you're just a little bit more aware of that note each time. You know, I find it much more interesting when I listen to it, to hear that connection, da-dum, 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 and it's actually more interesting than just bong, 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 bong. Don't know why, I think it's just to hear actually what the notes are and what the intervals are is nice. Now, as you carry on, this is where I was wondering if you could just inflect the harmonies a little bit more. So show us what they are, almost. Whether they are harmonies full of tension, harmonies full of sweetness, harmonies that are the key we're looking for. Do you know what I mean? So try that one more time from there and then just see how it develops. I think it's really better. The problem with these kind of classes, first of all, we've got Zoom to contend with. And then second of all, to make any noticeable difference, to be honest, you have to massively exaggerate it, probably much more than you ever would when you're just thinking about it for yourself, so that I can sit here and go, oh yes, now I can hear the difference. So I think that we can exaggerate this even more. So if... that change, so... Sorry, I haven't practiced it. But anyway, you get my drift, right? There's a kind of mystery about this diminished seventh here that I think you can get, and then that's the same as the one we had here. So the next thing I wanted to ask you is when we get to this B flat major, perhaps there's something quite sweet about it, quite sort of touching, I always find. You know, suddenly something sort of slightly smiley, that maybe we could find a stroke that matches that. Do you know what I mean? So you know, and again, it sweetens up when it gets back to the beat. So the kind of clouds come over after diminished and then they part again. I think, of course you get what I'm talking about, but let's just really exaggerate these different colours now for each of the harmonies. Maybe start it from that halfway through a bar, I know. Because I think that pianissimo there is quite significant, isn't it? I think that's the first time the bass line moves for ages. Yeah. So, you know, we've had this D pedal since you've come in. It's gone on for ages and ages and ages and ages. And then that's where it changes. Ya-da-da-da-dum. And I think there's something about that change. You know, we've waited such a long time for the bass line to move that it does there. You need to feel it here somewhere. You know, and I think that's why he's written that pianissimo as well. It's just an amazing bar line. Just go into it one more time and let me hear that bass line change with you. Yeah, it's beautiful. You see, it's interesting. It's funny, looking at the piano part again, you've only got two notes in the bass line in the whole of this opening section. You've had the D, which lasts from where you come in to that. And then you've got an A, which lasts until where you're about to land us, which is the big tune. You know, and I think if you have that structure in your head, it gives you such a big shape to play into. And that's a really important moment, of course. What you were just doing was gorgeous, actually, and I was sorry you stopped. I must have made some kind of motion at you that made you stop, so I apologise for that. What I was going to say is we've been talking about, I keep coming back to, you know, luxury notes or spicy notes or blue notes, whatever you want to call them. And again, in all of these scales, I think it's just worth slowing them down again and hearing which are the notes that are in the scale and which are the notes that give it colour. Do you know what I'm talking about? So, where's the music? So there's... And even something like a B sharp, that's even more foreign than, say, the A sharp in the previous beat. You know, they've got kind of like degrees of foreignness. You know, and I think something like that B sharp in D major is a crazy note. You know, and so I think, again, just give us a little bit of different colours. Can you play it really slowly from the D sharp? Play it very slowly from the bottom of the scale. And just show me the different colours of the different notes according to whether they're in the scale or not. Very nice. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you know this and you've heard this already, but it's just one of those things that if you practice it slowly like that, it will come out again. It'll come out like that when you play it fast. So listen, again, I'm just going to jump to a couple of things that occurred to me while you were playing through. because there are a lot of notes in this movement, and I think sometimes not every note is that important. I say it quietly, but you know what I mean. And I think when you get this tuned, you have, okay, the triplets, so all the triplets that start there. I wonder if you can play it in such a way that we hear the melodic line a little bit more. There's the melodic notes over the top, and maybe something in the bow can just let the rest of the notes play second fiddle a little bit more. Yeah? Do you want to just try that straight on the triplets? Yeah, it's already much, much better actually, and it makes you give a little bit of glow onto that top line. The two bars that I think you could exaggerate it is where the harmonies don't change. So it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th and 7th bars. There's I think both of those bars, because there's only one harmony in the bar, you can let the whole bar go a little bit more, possibly. So we don't need, I'm exaggerating, but we don't need to hear every note in that bar in that way, I think. Just sort of. And then you can come back to us with that tune. But it's almost like a hovering couple of bars, just waiting to swing back into action again. Try one more time, the whole of that melody. Yeah. Kenny, it's getting better and better. Yeah, and I think possibly there's a way technically of imagining the strings are closer to each other. Like almost play it like a double stop. Do you know what I mean? So the strings are actually on the same plane rather than on two different planes. Yeah? Just try those two bars. See how close you can get to the two strings to each other. Yeah, actually that's already helping. And funny enough, I shouldn't have stopped you, because even here, although you've actually got across all four strings, I think you can play this mental trick of sort of almost flattening the violin so that you haven't got these vast distances to cover. Do you know what I mean? It's just a sort of gentle ripple and then gentle ripple back again. Do you want to just try that straight there? Just ripple your way over to the G string and back to the E string again, as if there's no distance at all. Do you understand what I mean? This. I think that it can feel less, what's the word? You know what I mean. It's good. I tell you what it is, going for the G string, because you've got to cross two strings, haven't you? Have you got an open A and then, is that how, yeah. So I wonder, as you're playing that A, it's already on its way, almost. So you don't have to play the A and then jump two strings. So it's a much more fluid, yeah, so it's continuously in motion. It's coming, isn't it? I think what we're doing is prioritizing the fluency of the bow, and the fingers are just going to have to cope with it, rather than hearing all the different notes. I think it's just feeling the fluency of the bow is the important thing there, Just have one more go at it and see how much you can keep that bow travelling all the time, just floating and travelling all the time, just like a squid, octopus. It's nice. Yeah, it's getting better. Funny enough, the first one you did was fantastic. You know, because you were obviously really and then just gradually they started to get more further away, if you see what I mean. You know, so I think that feeling of just rippling through it really, really works. That's really lovely. Just in the last couple of minutes, I just want to try something, one more thing. Second subject, this is again my other obsession today, is to make the second subject sound more different from the first subject. Right? So you have a beautiful default setting of your sound. It's a beautiful sound. And I think you could just be more adventurous with finding variety in that. So when you come in here, this... maybe there's a sound there that's different to anything we've heard so far, because it needs to be different to anything we've heard so far. This is new material, right? And actually you need to delineate structurally, here's my second subject material. So even in right at the back of the audience's mind, it has to be something like, oh, this is new, you know. So can you find me a sound we just haven't heard before? Yeah, so I like what you're doing there. I think we can push that further now. So he's interesting, he's written this word amabile on that tune, so it's loving. And I think it's a very personal thing, love. We don't necessarily want the person at the back of the hall to know about our love. So let's try something a little bit more personal somehow. Just imagine, of course it's a concerto and you want the person at the back of the hall to hear you, but let's make a more personal sound here, one that we don't have to really project. Just try it. See what happens. So instead of sort of, it could be sort of, you know, something that actually doesn't have that projected focus that you might have the rest of the time, but just has this incredible warmth to it. There was some really lovely sounds there. Funny enough, I think what it is, it's almost like you're making a selfish sound. Sorry, I can't say it. A selfish sound. It's like you're saying, this sound is just for me. You know, it's just here, just my own. So even from the G sharp, as soon as you come in, this... there's something about it. It's almost like I've shut the rest of the world out. I'm not interested in what they think about it. I'm just creating this sound purely for my own pleasure. And I don't care if anyone else hears it. Great. It's absolutely, Kenny, that was beautiful. Do you know, there's something about you concentrating that hard on doing something that you want to do that actually is incredibly engaging for us. You know, so you don't actually have to throw it at us for us to hear it. I think you can draw us in that way. I don't know about the other people listening. I found that much more engaging, actually, to have you do something really that you wanted. That was very, very beautiful. And sustain it right to the end. You know, you're still doing it for yourself. You know, right to the end of that. I think it's really beautiful. Oh, yeah, there she is. I knew that was about to happen. Good. It's fantastic. It's beautiful playing. All three of you, if you're still here, I just want to say a massive thank you. I feel very, very lucky, very, very privileged to have had three great players like that to just indulge myself and, you know, find things to chat about. But thank you all very much for taking part. Really, really a great pleasure. And thank you, Cecily, for organising it.
Oh, it's definitely been a pleasure, and to have such wonderful performances of these pieces too is really great. I love, and this is exactly what I had in mind when I thought, hey, let's just have an online masterclass series where we can bring people from, you know, California and Canada and Malta and England all together in one space. I know that we have regular listeners now from all across the States and certainly in the UK. And people will, you know, this is up online for people to enjoy unless any of you ask me to take it down. So I'm really thrilled that we can be doing this. I personally had not that great a day, and here I am smiling and in love with this music again. So thank you very much for indulging that as well. We have time for some questions. So anyone who's on the Zoom call, if you want to... you can raise your hands. I'll put you in gallery view so I can see. I hope people have questions today. Sometimes people are very quiet and don't have any questions at all.
What on earth have you been talking about for the last hour and a half?
Well, I really do love this idea of rediscovering these very special notes that I think are what make us so drawn to these pieces. If they were just the regular notes without all those special ones, I don't think we'd still be looking at them here. And I knew we'd have a question. Ross, unmute our friend Ross.
Hi, Simon.
Hi, Ross.
So my question would be to you, out of the 3 concertos you've heard, which is your personal favourite? And if you were asked to audition for somewhere now, would you pick your personal favourite, or which one of those 3 would you use? Or maybe a different one, it doesn't even have to be that one, sorry. There's maybe more than one question there, but I'm sure you can answer all of them.
They're great questions. I really like those questions because we don't always play our favourite pieces. So I've always had a bit of a thing for the Sibelius Concerto. And it's still one of my favourite pieces of all time. And in fact, I brought this along. I was going to show Artur and I forgot. So you've got me going now. When I was at university, I did a thesis on Sibelius, and I was researching his revision processes. And in fact, I then got from Helsinki a photocopy of the manuscript of his original version of the Violin Concerto. I don't know if you ever heard the original version. It's crazy, the 1902 version. And I was just going to hold it up to show you. So there's I don't know if you can see, there's page 1 of the manuscript, and it's so tidy. It's really, really neat. And so I'm a bit of a Sibelius nerd, if truth be told. And there's a bit more. There's some crossings out. It's always nice to see crossings out, isn't it? There we go. So some proper Sibelius crossing out. Just as an aside, if you haven't heard the original 1902 version, there was a recording that Kavakos put out 20, maybe nearly 30, hang on, how old am I? Yeah, 30 years ago nearly now, that was astonishing, and I nearly fell off my chair when I first heard it. And if you haven't heard it, just go on, I must be on YouTube, look up the original version and listen through to it. It's absolutely astonishing. And what I find fascinating is that Sibelius obviously realised that he could do better and went and rewrote it, and that's the piece we see as this kind of polished, finished gem. But there's always this work in progress thing, you know, and he could have gone back and reworked it again and we still wouldn't have what we play now. So anyway, I digress. But Sibelius is my favourite concerto, but if I had to do a concerto audition tomorrow, I would play the Brahms, because it's just the one I've played the most and feel most comfortable with, if that answers your question. How about you?
I think Ross is looking at what concerto he's about to pick to play, and this might be where his question is coming from. Am I right? Ross studies with me at the Northern, so.
Okay. I mean, the thing about these concertos is they have such different personalities. And I used to play the Tchaikovsky for auditions, and it was fun. And I think now I might feel differently about it. I think then it felt like an obstacle course. That you do that bit, then you do that bit, then you do that bit, then you have to do that hard bit at the end, you know. And whereas the Brahms always felt slightly more like a chamber piece somehow, you know, the violin is much more integrated with the orchestral textures, and I started to prefer playing that one, you know, with the piano and actually playing it like I was playing a massive Brahms piano quartet or something. And I think that's why I ended up switching. It felt less like a sort of sport somehow. But I've definitely changed my feelings about the Tchaikovsky now, and I think I hopefully will never have to do another audition, but if I do, maybe I'll go back to it.
Thanks.
Amazing. Any other questions tonight? I'm looking for hands. I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, Leslie has a question. Leslie Ashworth has a question. She's typed it in. She says, we often hear these major concertos we heard today in competitions. Do you think it's important to choose those concertos to be on the same playing field? Or do you think that other concertos might be perceived as lesser? That might be perceived as lesser could be also used in competitions. And then she says, like Mendelssohn and Leslie. I think Mendelssohn's the greatest concerto there is, personally.
I don't know, why don't you answer that one first? I think that's an interesting question, but I mean, what do you?
I'm not of the competition world, so I don't think I'm a good person to answer the question. I always feel like you should play what you feel like you have a voice with. If you feel like you can represent yourself well with a piece of music and have something really to say with it, that's what you should play. But I know that there are certain things that, are expected. So,
I mean, that's a really nice answer, and I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I've only ever sat on one jury for an international competition, and it was a real eye-opener, I tell you. And when it got to the final, I can't remember, I think there were like a couple of Tchaikovskys and a couple of Brahmses. And it was pretty disappointing for me, actually. I would have really liked to have heard a Szymanowski or a Bartok or something. And the guy who won played the Brahms, and he was just brilliant. And he could have played Bar Bar Black Sheep, and he probably would have won. So I think that actually the important thing is that you invest your personality in whatever it is you're playing. The way he played the Brahms was a way, I've never heard it before or since like that. It was a completely individual way of playing it. And I think that whether you play the Mendelssohn or the Barber, or the Kabalevsky or the Brahms, I think if you stand out from the crowd, it's the way you play it, not the piece you play. So as Cecily says, the piece you feel most invested in, most able to project yourself with, is the piece to choose, I guess.
She says, thank you. She says,
oh, isn't that a relief? That makes sense.
Leslie's another Torontoite. Are you back in Toronto?
Leslie, how lovely. Lucky you.
Any other questions? On the question of repertoire, something that I've been talking to my students about is that I personally feel like it's really important that they know these standard concerti, whether they're the ones that they go out and play the most or not. I think it's really important to have learned them. It's something we go on about a bit because it's hard, it's hard to have enough time to learn all those notes, but
it is, although you can learn these things incredibly quickly if you put your mind to it. I mean, in a superficial way. And I think, however old you are, you could set yourself the challenge of just learning one over the summer holidays. Because as Cecily says, I think, it would be unimaginable to go through life not knowing one of these concertos, not knowing how it goes or just not knowing the music. So just to take the opportunity to learn them at any time, it's worth doing, isn't it?
Well, I should be taking that advice and finally learning the Tchaikovsky concerto myself.
Let's come back in a few weeks and see how it sounds.
Sign myself up for my series. Emily says yes, do that. Any other questions?
Actually, on that subject, my confession is that although I learned the Sibelius at university and when I studied the piece, I've never performed it. It's the one concerto of all of the, I can't think of any others, but I haven't performed the Sibelius, partly because I like it so much. I just don't want to let myself loose on it somehow.
Oh,
yeah, I don't know. It's sitting there waiting for the day somehow.
I think we'd all like to hear it.
Oh, not at the moment.
All right, well, I think we should just wrap up. We're a little bit earlier tonight, which is nice. And with a huge thank you to Simon and to our performers tonight and to the teachers for sending them to us to get to enjoy. I'll just put in my usual plug for the next week. I put up a poll on the Facebook group to see if everyone wanted to continue this, and I got an overwhelming response that yes, we should keep going. So we are going on. Our next guest is Subin Kim. He's a dear friend of mine from first years of university together. He teaches at the New England Conservatory. He is a monster violinist, just really amazing. And I just again have to say how amazed I am that this is working, and that we've had violinists really from all over the world coming together for a few hours a week. Violinists, we tend to hide out in our practice rooms, in our corners. We don't congregate like some other groups of musicians do, and I love that this is bringing us together in what is a very strange time in the world. I'll also say that we have been really fortunate. I've had some really generous donors each week send us actually really nice amounts of money that have allowed me to send on small honorariums to our teachers. But just a little push out there that if everyone gave $1 or £1, I could do even more. So think about it. Invite your friends to join us. Send them the YouTube link. Send them the Facebook group. And we'll keep going. There's no reason to stop. So thank you again, and see you next week.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Cicely. Brilliant.
Thanks and good night.